Eddie Hearn is claiming that Anthony Joshua versus Filip Hrgovic for the vacant IBF heavyweight title is a real possibility for next year. He says that the IBF have instructed the winner of Usyk versus Fury to fight Filip Hrgovic next, no exceptions. And the reason that it could be AJ versus Hrgovic for the vacant title, according to Eddie Hearn, is down to this report that we got from ESPN. Bear in mind, ESPN is Tyson Fury's American broadcaster. They came out with a report that there is a two-way rematch clause for the Usyk-Fury fight. So if the loser decides to trigger that rematch clause, presumably they would get stripped of the IBF belt. The other belts, at the moment, it seems, would be okay, and they keep hold of them. But according to what Eddie Hearn is saying in this apparent order by the IBF, the rematch would mean that somebody gets stripped of that IBF belt, and potentially Anthony Joshua fights Filip Hrgovic for the vacant title. Now, this, I have to imagine, would be Eddie Hearn's preferred route right now, rather than proceeding with the Deontay Wilder fight. The Deontay Wilder fight is a much more lucrative fight financially, but with the Filip Hrgovic fight, he has a piece of both fighters. Anthony Joshua is signed to a lifetime contract with Matchroom, and Filip Hrgovic is on a co-promotional deal with Matchroom and Sauerland, who obviously Eddie Hearn and Matchroom have worked very closely with for many, many years. So politically, if you like, it would make more sense to make Anthony Joshua versus Filip Hrgovic, and the winner of that could then go on and fight Deontay Wilder as a first defense for an awful lot of money. So let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Anthony Joshua versus Filip Hrgovic. Does that fight excite you, intrigue you more than Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder next? I mean, a lot of people are not so hot on Filip Hrgovic anymore, given his last two performances, because he struggled against Yeli Zhang, but in light of how well Zhang did against Joyce, it was still a decent performance by Hrgovic. But against Dempsey McKean, that was really, really flat from Hrgovic. Yes, McKean turned up to win and he tried his best and he's a big, awkward southpaw, but Hrgovic just seemed so disinterested. He also didn't seem to be in the greatest of shape. And people were making excuses for Hrgovic, and I think it was valid to at least speculate that his father passing away in the run-up to the Zhang fight might have affected his performance. But did it also affect his performance going into the Dempsey-McKean fight? Because, again, he looked very, very flat against McKean. It was a really soporific display. He did eventually get the stoppage. I think that was in the final round. But he didn't look $1 million. He didn't light up the arena or light up the heavyweight division. Didn't put the division on notice with that stoppage of Dempsey-McKean. So I don't think there'll be that much enthusiasm, to be honest, for Anthony Joshua versus Filip Hrgovic if it were to happen next for the vacant IBF. And here's something I do want to say. I've been saying this for several videos over the past couple months, or in several videos, should I say. And that is that I have a problem with these ex-champions who've just lost and haven't beaten anyone significant in a long time, getting these extremely high rankings, coming off the back of, losing their world titles. I don't agree with it. I mean, Anthony Joshua was schooled twice by Alexander Usyk. It's not like he went in there and they had a proper back and forth seesaw battle where you could have gone either way. If it's a situation like that, I could understand an Anthony Joshua retaining a high ranking. Same with Deontay Wilder. Obviously, he did go back and forth with Tyson Fury, but ultimately he got knocked out. Then he came back against Robert Helenius, and he's been extremely inactive. That's another thing with Deontay Wilder. Okay, maybe you give him a bit more credit for his performance against Fury than Anthony Joshua's performance against Usyk, or two performances. But the inactivity has to play a part. But yet and still, these guys are getting ranked extremely high. And it's not just AJ and Wilder and Andy Ruiz. Well, Ruiz has been dropped down now. Funny they haven't dropped AJ and Wilder down in the rankings. They need to do that. Yeah, if you're going to drop Ruiz down, you need to be dropping AJ and Wilder down too. But it isn't just AJ and Wilder. This is something that's been going on in boxing for a very long time. Certain sanctioning bodies are bigger culprits than others. The IBF don't tend to be too bad with it. The WBC are notoriously bad with it. But if you go back to the likes of Zab Judah, he kept on getting recycled as a world title challenger. Think about how many people he fought. He was coming off a loss when he fought Floyd Mayweather. He'd lost to Carlos Boldemir. But then Mayweather was like, oh yeah, I'll fight him. Bring Zab back. When Amir Khan was world champion, remember that? The default guys that you would face if you're a new world champion at 140 or 147 would be Zab Judah or Paulie Malignaggi. And look, I got nothing against Paulie. Paulie's a stand-up guy as far as I'm concerned. But the way he got preferential treatment, the way these sanctioning bodies, I mean, you could describe it as them using him. Whatever the case may be, they didn't deserve, him and Zab Judah, who did, of course, fight each other, they didn't deserve all these opportunities they were getting based on the recent form they had. You know? So this recycling of old champions and putting them in extremely high positions in the rankings when they haven't beaten anyone of note in a long time, it needs to stop. It's definitely a bugbear of mine. And, you know, with Anthony Joshua, if he's going to get a title shot, I'd like to see him in some kind of eliminator first. Put Anthony Joshua in there against Frank Sanchez. Put Anthony Joshua in there against Deontay Wilder. Put Anthony Joshua in there against, who else is there? Martin Bakole. Put Anthony Joshua in there against Zheli Zhang. I mean, Zhang's already earned his spot, so he doesn't need to do that. But the guys who haven't earned their spots yet, yeah, put them in some kind of eliminator of Anthony Joshua. If AJ can come through it, all right. Maybe get a title shot off the back of that, or maybe then fight a final eliminator. Yeah? With most contenders, this is what they have to do. Most contenders who are actually good, they have to fight their way into a mandatory position to get a title shot. They're very rarely given title shots voluntarily by the champion. Usually, whenever champions have voluntary defenses, the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them will pick low-hanging fruit. That's just how it is. But occasionally you'll get a champion who'll say, you know what, nah, I'll fight anybody. And to his credit, Anthony Joshua was one of those guys. He did want all the smoke. You remember when the Dillian Whyte rematch nearly happened? I think that was towards the back end of 2018, early 2019. Dillian Whyte turned it down. Did AJ go for somebody that was ranked number 15? Because remember, he had, 3 belts at a time? He could have picked somebody ranked 15 in one of the sanctioning bodies. He didn't. He kept cycling through much higher ranked contenders until he found somebody that was willing to take the fight. He offered it to, obviously, Dillian Whyte first of all. He offered it to Luis Ortiz, apparently the boogeyman. Ortiz didn't take it for a career high payday. And Ortiz's manager later on came out and said that he regrets Ortiz not taking the fight. That they made a bad call in not taking that Anthony Joshua fight. Yeah, they realized they made a bad call after Anthony Joshua got knocked out by Andy Ruiz, right? But anyway, they offered Luis Ortiz the fight. They offered Adam Kaunaki, who was unbeaten. Obviously, Jarrell Miller was offered the fight, and he did actually get the fight, but failed multiple tests or failed for multiple substances. And eventually, Andy Ruiz decided to accept. So they negotiated. Anthony Joshua negotiated with 5 different heavyweights, and he wasn't going down to the bottom of the rankings to pick low-hanging fruit. So occasionally you get a champion who comes along who is willing to just fight anybody out there, yeah? But it's not the majority of them. Normally, if they're doing a voluntary defense, they're going to pick someone lower down the rankings whose style suits them and all that kind of thing. And that's why the mandatory system, as I've said in many recent videos, is so important. It's important that you keep that conveyor belt going of elimination matches and then final eliminators and then new mandatory contenders and then force those mandatory challengers onto the champion on a regular basis, at regular intervals. That way, a champion can't just cherry pick his way through a title reign. You don't want that. That's not good for boxing if a champion can do that. The champion has to constantly prove his position because he has privileges that contenders don't have, perks that contenders don't have, yeah, advantages that contenders don't have in a purse bid scenario, etc. So for having those privileges, for having those perks, that's all well and good, but you need to be tested by mandatory challengers on a regular basis to see whether you really deserve that spot. You see? So that's my issue with Anthony Joshua versus Filip Hrgovic for the vacant IBF. If that happens, I don't think AJ deserves it right now. Maybe if he can fight somebody else before then and put on a really good performance, somebody in the top 10, I'd feel better about it. But as it stands right now, I don't like it. In fact, I didn't even like AJ versus Deontay Wilder being a final eliminator. And that's not even a vacant world title. That would just be a final eliminator. I feel like there are other contenders who are more worthy of taking part in a final eliminator than Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder right now. But, in boxing, money talks and BS walks. It is what it is. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments below. The possibility of Anthony Joshua fighting Filip Hrgovic because of the fact that there is a two-way rematch clause for Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk according to ESPN. And again, I do have to laugh at the Tyson Fury fanboys and Tyson Fury's obvious contradictory behavior here, because he scuppered the Alexander Usyk fight earlier on this year by saying that there shouldn't be a rematch clause in the contract and claiming that Usyk's team put it on the contract at the last minute when it was actually Fury's own team who had it in the contract right from the very start. Acting like it was this deal breaker that there was a rematch clause in the contract. But now we hear that there's a rematch clause in the contract and Tyson Fury signed and accepted it. And it just so happens to be right after Usyk looked vulnerable against Daniel Dubois. Coincidence? Of course not. But the Tyson Fury fanboys, of course, will look over all that. Anyway, that fight is on. I'm glad that fight's on. The two-way rematch clause is something I understand. I would prefer in Fury, Usyk Fury, if we get a, definitive result the first time so that there's no need for a rematch. That's what I would hope. But if a rematch clause, two-way, is what it takes to get the fight done to make everybody feel comfortable, then so be it. I understand it. When it comes to voluntary defenses for champions, when it comes to unifications, particularly undisputed, I get it. But hopefully somebody gets beat so one-sided, in such a, decisive one-sided fashion that there's no call for a rematch. That's what I'm hoping. Because we need to keep the heavyweight division moving. Allowances can be made. They certainly should be made for things like undisputed. Yeah? It's not like a regular mandatory or anything like that. No. So allowances can be made because it's a historic fight. But ideally, I'm just talking about ideally, I would prefer whoever the winner is out of Usyk and Fury to just, be able to move on without any rematch being called. That's my take on it. Give me your take in the comment section below. And before I go, I want to give a shout out to all the new subscribers to my Patreon page. I cover loads of different topics in my weekly podcast, as you can see on screen right now, from current events to deep dives down the rabbit hole and everything in between. I'm really enjoying the feedback and the discussions we've been having on there lately. So if you'd like to join the conversation, just click the link in the description box below. Are you sick and tired of the mainstream mindset? Does the dogmatic conformity and pathological ignorance have you tearing your hair out in frustration? Then don't be alone. Come and join our brotherhood on Patreon. We stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. You'll gain access to my weekly topical podcast where we take more deep dives than Jacques Cousteau on an endless variety of subjects. There's also videos, interviews, live Q&As, as well as a vast back catalogue of previous episodes, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen via the Patreon app or download in high-quality MP3. Connect with myself and hundreds of other members in our Element chat group. There's no contract, no commitment, you can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a Mickey D's McMuffin. Just head to my Patreon page via the link below this video and select the tier called the Brotherhood of Reason. I'll see you over there.